I'm Van Sebastian, here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge Season 8 interview. It's episode 50, folks. We're 2 away from the end of the year. We'll be talking with Nathan Burgoine and discussing his book, Stuck With You. For those of you who don't know our guest, Nathan grew up a reader and studied literature in university while making a living as a bookseller. His works can be found in genres ranging from comedy, romance, and erotica through to serious and sci-fantastic, and he seems equally comfortable writing short as well as long form. A cat lover, Nathan managed to fall in love and marry Daniel, who's a confirmed dog person, and their ongoing cat or dog détente ended with the rescue of a 6-year-old husky named Coach, who has given them 4 wonderful years before crossing the Rainbow Bridge. Since then, they've rescued Max, another husky, who is much younger and very determined to be a bed dog. They live in Ottawa, Canada, where socialized healthcare and gay marriage have yet to cause the sky to cave in. Nathan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again. It's awesome to be here.
And you get the returning champion t-shirt. Yay!
Exactly.
So for anyone who hasn't heard one of your earlier interviews, can you just give us a quick, where was the passion to write? Like, where did that come from?
So I worked in a bookstore for almost, 2 decades. And when I first got there and got access to books in print, way back when it was on a microfiche, sorry, there's just something I feel like I'm going to crumble into
What
dust.
is this microfiche you speak of?
They came with these little slides that you had to put on a tray, and it was backlit and reversed with a mirror.
And then you had to poke the hamster to keep the wheel going.
Oh God. Anyway, and I discovered there were all these wonderful queer books out there that I'd never heard of because at the time period we are speaking of, no teacher was going to risk handing them to me. I realized that a lot of queer people, especially those younger, will say things like there were no queer books around when I was young. And I always kind of cringe a little because yes, there absolutely were, but no one gave them to you. And that's functionally it's the same deal that you never got them when you were young, but they did exist. And so I went on this massive kick of finding these books, and I bumped into one at random. In fact, I think it was actually that the publisher sent me the wrong one in the order that I placed. And I got a book called The Night We Met by Rob Burns, and it was like the clouds parted, the heavens opened. It was a funny gay caper, and I didn't know that there were allowed to be funny gay books, because at this point almost everything I bumped into was super serious, somewhat depressing, and of course given the era they were coming from, but this book was just completely different. It was like reading a madcap, a mafia caper romance almost, and I fell in love. Wrote a review of that book, and the author reached out to me. Don't do that, never do that. He would be the first to tell you never do that. But he reached out to thank me for writing the review, and it started a conversation. I asked him if he had any other books. He aimed me at other people because at the time he didn't, and some of those people he aimed me at happened to be editors of anthologies. And as you mentioned, I love writing short fiction. And so I tried. I wrote a short story. They accepted it, and then that was it. It was, I told myself I'd like to get published. I'll write this short story, and there, I'm done. Yeah, and then just stopped.
Meanwhile, Endora sat over your shoulder going,
Well, I'm glad you weren't done, because you've brought a lot of good into this world.
Oh, thank you.
And especially the one we're to talk about today, because I think you told us about like the origin of the idea for this in your last interview. So Stuck With You.
Yeah.
What is the yay cover?
Oh yeah, there we go.
There we go. What is the elevator pitch? And then we'll dive into it, including teaching me about a new genre.
Yeah, so the elevator pitch is coming back of one of the worst March breaks of his life. Ben has been cut off from all his friends, and his little queer group has splintered, and he wanted to spend his March break, which he has to spend with his father in Toronto, which he doesn't enjoy, trying to fix it. But someone broke his phone the moment, like before he got on the train to head out there. And so he's been literally cut off from his friends for the entire 9 days. It's been the worst experience. He's in a foul mood. And then who sits beside him for the train ride back for the next 4.5 hours, but the guy who broke his phone. And so he's stuck beside someone he never wanted to see after a horrible week, but it turns out they have a lot more in common than he thinks. And despite butting heads immediately, this guy beside him, Caleb, isn't at all what he thought, and vice versa.
All right, so let's break open the new genre so then we can discuss how the book relates to it, because I
Yeah.
love the story behind the book.
Yeah, so this is a high-low, and I'm sure that a vast majority of people listening and watching will be like, a what now? Because that was my reaction when I was approached. So a high-low, as in HI-LO, is high readability, low complexity. And the idea behind that is, so if you've got someone who is learning English as a second language, or if you have someone with learning disabilities, reading disabilities, any number of reasons that someone might want an easier read, but at the same time, still want to deliver
An engaging story.
An engaging story. So, because so often what happens when you have these situations is like, here, read this book that's actually written for 7-year-olds. Well, what teenager is going to want to read a book that was written for 7-year-olds?
Right.
So the high-low genre, or category, I guess, I don't even know if I should call it a genre. It's a type of book,
Okay.
aims to fill in that gap with readable stories, but the main characters, the protagonists, the situations are realistic, grounded. This is what my life is like stories, to catch the interest and to keep the interest high, so that they're not reading, Jack ran up the hill, Jack fell down the hill.
Yeah, yeah.
So, given that, how do you fold in the complexities of queer characters and queer lives?
With a lot of
And
help from Redditor.
well, and we
I,
can use Stuck With You as the example too, because
Yeah, so what happened? So I was approached by the publisher, which was a wonderful and novel experience for me, asking if I would like to do this. And my immediate reply was, I need to do some research first, because I don't know what that is.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to say, yes, I can do that unless I.
What?
Yeah, I was like, we'd really like you to write a high-low. I'm like, neat, a what? And it turned out I had read a couple, and it turned out that the person who I'd read was the person who put my name forward, which is very much how things work in queer publishing, if you're kind and raise each other up. So
Mhm.
I'd read a couple. I read a few more, and I got the idea pretty quickly. And I'm like, okay, no, I can do this. Yes, I can do this. And so I reached out and accepted. Um, and what I think came down to was, it was a lot like writing novellas, and I love writing novellas, because when it comes to the word count, even though it looks like a full-length book,
Mhm.
like a YA middle grade length book, um, it's only about 35,000 words.
Okay.
Because part of making a book high-low is to make sure that the font is clear, legible. Maybe it's a bit larger than you're used to in a regular book. Because again, if you're talking dyslexia or other
Mhm.
visual or reading,
Hmm.
you need a very clear cut, even down to the way that lines. You know how in regular adult fiction it'll say organization on the
Mhm.
next line? Don't do that, right? So there's all these little tricks that aren't used, to make sure that things are as clear as possible for people with reading issues. Um, so yeah, it's not as long. So I had all my novella toolkit already packed and ready to go from writing like my holiday novellas. So I knew you have time to deal with one problem in a
Right.
novella. And so that was the sort of the mental attitude I went into, approaching, was like, I'm going to give this kid one major thing to be dealing with. And that's going to be the core of the novel. Yes, there'll be a few little subplots and some other things going on, but his biggest issue is the person he's stuck with on this train. And that is going to be the core dynamic. But how they get to know each other did involve some more of those complexities of queer life, in that I had his friend group be kind of shattered and he's cut off from them. And the reason they're shattered, came down to some biphobia. Like one of their group, she broke up with her girlfriend and is now dating a boy, and they're reacting terribly to it. And he
Mhm.
realizes how shitty that is, and he wants to fix it, but he can't. And when it turns out, spoiler, when it turns out that the boy beside him also turns out to be bi, they have a few discussions about that, about what it's like to just be assumed not because you happen to be dating someone, and so forth. So
Mhm.
Lorimer was really keen as a publisher on there being some meat to chew on, some queer reality to chew on, as that grounded in everyday today feeling for them. But it was fascinating. I did have to have a little bit of a come to the table talk about how queer joy is still a radical act, that it's fine for characters to be happy. So
Yeah.
Right,
there,
right, right.
like,
They don't all have to be operas.
yeah, it doesn't always have to be that every part of his life is a struggle because he's queer. In fact, it's really important that it's not.
Mhm.
So and that's what happens when, I mean, I really enjoyed my experience with the press. I cannot speak highly enough of my editor, Alistair Thompson, brilliant guy. Um, but there was that all of my previous publishing, with one exception, has been with queer presses.
Mm.
So there were, you know what it's like when you bump into those queer 101 discussions,
Yep.
and you're like, oh God, we have to start here. Okay, and you're sort of like,
All right, let's back my life up 20 years. This is where we
yeah,
are.
right. Okay, so when I say non-binary, like, so there's some stuff. But it was fine, and it was great. It were clearly, they want to provide a service to an to a marginalized group, and they're doing their homework. But they're still doing their homework. So
Good,
yeah.
excellent.
Good
Love
for
that.
them, though. That's fantastic. Is there anything else about the novel we didn't think to ask that you want people to know?
I would say the one thing that I want people to go in there with the right perspective is that it is a rom-com. Like, this isn't, I'm not moving mountains here. I'm just entertaining a reader. And especially in the world of YA, where there is that pressure, I feel, for authors to explain that big challenge and, inspire and show these kids that they can do it. Like, yeah, what he gets shown he can do is actually pull up the guts to ask someone out, and that's just, to me, that was moving a mountain. That would have been massive to me as a young reader. And it's funny, like, he's a goofy kid, and and even Caleb, who's kind of sly, and he's the popular sort of jockish kind of character. He has a few moments that I think hopefully will make someone laugh, because I remember being so much more engaged with books when I was younger if they made me laugh. And that was what I was going for, especially with someone who might be struggling to pick up the language or to enjoy reading. I'm like, well, make it fun then. Yeah.
Excellent. Love
That's
that.
awesome. Bez, did you have questions?
Uh, I'm kind of just enamored with the idea, mostly because some of the people that have responded to like my own writings were from countries that I would never have thought of that the book would have been picked up. So I kind of like the idea that there are people in countries where being queer may not be, so easy. And I just love the idea that if English isn't their first language, this is something they can absorb and really enjoy and get their teeth into, so to speak. Um, I think that's wonderful. It's the first I've ever heard of it, and I'm glad you're bringing it to the table for all of our listeners and our viewers, because I think that even someone who hasn't written in that before, it makes me want to get the book, because just so I can get exposed to what this whole as we say, semi-genre, whatever we're going to call it, classification. I think it's a really good idea, because I think there are a ton of people, more than we probably know, that fit into this category in one way or another, and they haven't been represented, or they haven't had something that's marketed to them. I think it's brilliant. I really love this idea.
Yeah, like, I was in love with it from the moment I had it explained to me, and I'm like, oh, this. I kept thinking of how I have a lot of teacher friends, and how they have their class libraries, and how often I'd seen them discussing like reading level. I've got some kids, like, especially, like, I'm from Ottawa's Canada's capital, so I'm from a capital city in a fairly liberal part of the country. We have a lot of refugee and sort of first generation families, again, struggling with English, or who have literally arrived with next to nothing coming into the school systems. And just the idea that there might be a book on the shelf that is accessible to them just makes me happy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely, absolutely. And just think of how many lives can be changed by the fact that they just found something. Plus, I also love the low complexity, or at part of it where you're just dealing with one issue. I kind of like that, and it's something I've always struggled with in trying to write short fiction. I always have so many words, so many damn
Of all the words, all the
James,
words.
James
Yeah.
Missioner, kind of stuff crowding my head. So I like the idea that this gives a focus not only for the reader, but also for the writer, because it allows you to create something that can truly onion skin these characters, but not do it in an overly complex way. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really beautiful thing. And I think it could help authors who may have weaknesses in their development of their characters and stuff. It gives them an opportunity to flex those muscles a bit more and to get some muscle memory going. And I say muscle as in your brain, going and trying to get that accomplished, and so I think it's good not only for the readers, I think it's good for the authors too.
I had a blast, and I learned so much working with my editor as well. And it was so funny. I was so nervous. I'm pretty sure I overthought it. I overthink everything. But I went through, and it was great. Like the feedback I got from him was just brilliant. But I leaned on dialogue, and dialogue is one of
Mm-hmm.
my strengths. It's what I like.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, for YA, so much of it is either their inner thoughts or discussions with other characters anyway. And I realized, oh my God, I can just lean that way. I don't have to have those paragraphs of descriptive prose that don't, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're important in certain genres, but in this one, no, it isn't. They're
Right.
sitting on a train. I don't have to describe it beyond that. And
Right.
and how
Right.
freeing that was, it's like, oh my God, I could just be in their heads. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
I also just briefly, I'm sorry, Vance. The idea that he broke his phone, did that also give you the opportunity to put the devices away and allow for, because I think that's something that I think writers should bring back, a way to disconnect from the devices to even instruct people, hey, you know what? You can put this little thing down every now and then, you don't have to
Yeah.
have it
So
available all the time.
it came right out of realizing that if I was going to strand two teenagers in a train car beside each other, and make them talk, one of them needed to not have a phone, or it was just going to end before it began. Like,
Right, right,
because they
right.
just pop
No,
their earbuds in and they're done. And in
right,
fact, at the beginning of the story, Ben is very much like, please just put in your earbuds. Please just put in. He's just sitting there waiting for the guy beside him to put his ear, but he doesn't. And then their initial conversation is realizing that, he didn't even realize what had happened. Like the breaking of the phone is pretty quickly tucked aside as, oh, that was an accident. Like there's more going on. And at that point they start this discussion, and I made, Caleb is a conscientious enough individual that he's like, putting in his earbuds and listening to his phone, that'd be kind of insulting once like the person beside you is
right.
can't do
There's
it
no
as
way to
a
get around that. Yeah. Wall.
yeah. So, but yeah, you're right. Like, and it was a very conscious choice. I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do? I'm like, I can't even let their phones just run out of charge, because nowadays you can charge anything anywhere. It was
Right.
actually, yeah, it was actually one of the first plot point. I'm like, if I'm going to make two people who don't like each other talk, I have to get rid of a phone. Yeah.
Right. No, I
Mm-hmm.
love that.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love that.
I have a genre question.
Sure.
You are a champion of writing reviews. Do the Y contingent of YA readers write reviews these days? I just haven't
Yes,
noticed.
and I'm including the idea of talking about it online as
Okay.
writing a review, because they do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like most, yeah, like there's the book talk, there's threads, there's Instagram, like they're out there talking about the books that they love. Are they writing a prose review? Not as likely. But so it's funny. There's in my likely outdated experience, things shifted from like journal to live journal to Tumblr to like it's moved
Right. The
platforms.
progression has been, the
Mm-hmm.
needle's been moving that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
it always has been. But with, like, I would say YA readers these days, I mean, they network, they talk to each other all the time. And I know, even just from talking to like teenagers that are, my friends have teenagers now, so it's easy to find out what's going on in teenage world. But I mean, they talk to each other, they recommend stuff to each other. And, this. But there are some teens out there who are
All right. I was just curious.
Can you cover that last bullet point just that you made right there, because you kind of stuttered and I would like to
oh,
get it.
okay. Yeah. So these days, I'd say that for most of the teenagers, their reviews are placed pretty much online in like a video format or some sort of interactive watch me talk about this format. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
The gatekeepers at Amazon must love that.
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking some point they're gonna catch on and go, oh, wait a minute, we're
Well,
losing a whole market here because we're not making this available.
yeah, you
I see that
already
coming.
see, yeah, you
Yeah.
already see tables at brick and mortar stores that say "as seen on Book Talk." So it's already, yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
and that's
Nice.
book TOK.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
TikTok. Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to mention?
Only that if this is something you're interested in trying, I would say reach out. Like there are quite a few publishers. I mean, I'm in Canada, so I went with, I mean, Lorimer Press is one of the many. Orca. I know there are US publishers that do this as well. I mean, if you search high-low YA, you'll be surprised what pops up because I sure was. And again, it's the support from librarians and teachers is very different, but a fascinating experience. So if you've got any interest in writing this way, I
How
would hardly.
how have you encountered, and I don't know if it's as much a thing there as it is here. What have you encountered by way of the book bannings that are going on with queer
Ugh.
stuff?
I have been very
Writing
lucky.
this.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. I so far, like me myself, the Nathan Burgoine name, I've been really lucky, especially given that I haven't changed my name through various categories or genres. So like Nathan Burgoine is right there beside erotica as well as YA, which I don't think you could get away with anywhere near as easily in the States. Um, it hasn't, like, I won't say that it hasn't touched Canada. It absolutely has. There's this awful tendency for people to say things are better in Canada when no, they're not. It just doesn't generate as much noise. And it's politer is the only way I'll put it. Like it doesn't come off as nasty because it's done quietly, or well, less loud, I guess. I have not bumped into it myself, but I have friends here up in Canada as well who've already had it happen, had their books challenged. I think the process by which books are challenged is somewhat different in Canada than it is in a lot of the individual states, and I know that it varies state by state down there too. So it's not as clear cut as I think. There's some states where if a book is even remotely challenged, that's it; it's yanked off the shelf until the review happens, etc.
Well, it's just the thing that drives me crazy about the whole thing, and I know we're getting off topic here, but the thing that drives me crazy about it is that these parents are just like, if the book isn't on the shelf, bitch, do you think that's the only way kids are accessing stuff? Is
Yeah.
that must be on the shelf? What conversation are we having here? What part of the era are you in? Because it's not where the rest of us are.
Yeah. Well, and also it's like what, like the vast majority of the book bans down there are organized by 11 people.
Yeah, and they're running into major problems. Moms for Liberty, they are so in a dire situation. It's a spiral right now, and I could not be happier. I've made all the popcorn. I'm ready for it.
Go down in flames, please.
Yes, right. I'll bring the s'mores.
All right, let's put the politics away. Nathan, are you ready for our get to know you questions?
Absolutely.
Take it away, guys.
Well, in this year of WoW, what one word describes your favorite food?
Oh, it's 2 words: white chocolate.
That's interesting. Okay. Your favorite entertainment genre?
TTRPG.
Okay. All right. Where are you on the spectrum of mundane versus magical?
Ooh, hidden magical, but definitely magical.
Okay. All right. Love that. Your preferred level of PDA?
Safe. I know that's a bad answer, but
yeah, well, it is what it is. The environment where you relax the most?
tea. As long as there's tea.
Nice.
We'll put the kettle on. All right. Your preferred beverage?
Tea or white hot chocolate? Yeah.
See, previous question. All right. Where do you fall on the scale of youthful naivete versus the wisdom of experience?
Jaded.
Oh, well, at least it makes fabulous jewelry, All right. Your favorite fictional character?
I am going to go all the way back to the night we met, and I wish I could remember his name, and I want to say it's Andrew, the main character in the night we met by Rob Burns.
Excellent. Gonna check that out. All right. And your favorite mode of travel?
I'm going to say husky.
Have you done the dark slides?
No, but he pulls, so it's fantastic.
Okay. So it's wherever he wants. Okay, got it. Yeah. Well, you made it through the list. Bravo.
You did, bravo. I had to ask because one of my husband's dreams vacations is an Alaskan cruise where we stop and actually do a dog sled.
Yeah, Max is too enthusiastic for dog sledding,
Fair.
would be one way of putting it. He wants to go where he wants to go. So it would
Shiny.
be, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. But it's one thing, like if you've got a big hill and you're walking him, it's great. He just gets you up the hill.
Nice. That's awesome.
You do all the steps.
So, what's up next for you? What have you got planned now?
In the pipeline, I finally finished my trilogy. So Triad Magic will come out next April. So that is super exciting.
Excellent.
For those of you not in the know, I blew all the tendons in one of my arms a couple of years ago, and so writing short things became mandatory rather than something I wanted to do. But I'm finally recovered, finished physio, etc. And so I got to finish Triad Magic finally. So that's the next thing, and that's going to be fantastic.
Nice. And for folks who don't know it, that's the series where you blended a mage, a vampire, and a werewolf
A
against their
demon.
clans. Oh,
Yeah.
a demon. Yeah, and against their clan, though. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's an urban
Excellent.
paranormal version of Ottawa. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. What better tagline? You know, I can
Anything
see it on a
else?
movie poster now.
Anything else coming up? Like, are you still doing book tours for Stuck With You?
No, I've pretty much wrapped up everything for Stuck With You. You're the caboose on the train of Stuck With You, which is awesome.
Woohoo!
Yeah, so
I'd get
I
up
don't
and twerk just to celebrate the caboose, but that would be, there's too much therapy involved for people.
I do have another I can't quite talk about it yet. So I have another idea for another high-low, and I think that's going to move forward. And the next thing after that is probably going to be another series of holiday romances, but this time I'm not going to jump into Christmas. I'm going to go to Halloween. So
Ooh.
yeah.
Tackling the big one.
Yep.
Nice. Where is the best place for people to connect with you, chat with you?
If you look up Nathan Burgoine, I'm the only one. It's fantastic. It's the best part about having my name. But if you go to nathanburgoyne.com, that drops you on the blog, and that connects you to everywhere else.
Perfect. All right. Any final words of wisdom?
If you say you're jaded, try to mean that you're just less optimistic than you used to be.
Love it. All right, folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Nathan Burgoyne for joining us. Nathan, thank you for coming back and sharing your latest work.
Thank you.
All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. The show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Charlie wave.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.